Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, July 20th, 2026, regular Borough Assembly meeting to order. With that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Lynn,
Here,
Vice Mayor Stanton Gregor,
excused.
Member Martin.
Here.
Member Mucci,
Here.
Member Newman,
Here.
Member Schwartz,
Excused.
Member Valentine.
Excused.
Thank you.
Tonight, we have 4 assembly members. We have 3 people in the chamber and we have 1 person on Zoom. And with that, I'm going to move on to the voluntary pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the agenda tonight, we have 1 set of minutes of the regular assembly meeting of July 6th, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Okay.
Moved by member Mucci, seconded. By Scott, member Newman. Yeah, I'm not there yet. And I move my tongue together here. Any changes? Okay, hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn.
Yes. And those minutes are approved unanimously. I have now moving on to the approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by member Mucci again, and seconded by member Newman. Are there any proposed amendments? Okay, hearing none, now would the clerk please call the roll on the approval of the immediate agenda?
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Martin.
Yes.
That also passes 4-0. There are no public hearings tonight. There are no bid awards, and with that, I'm gonna move on to person to be heard related to the agenda. But before I open that up, I want to make a few comments here, and I'll ask that any of the presenters be respectful and direct your comments to the assembly as a whole. Each speaker is allowed 1 opportunity to speak during this portion of the meeting, and each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. You'll receive a reminder when you have 30 seconds remaining, and we will move on to the next speaker. Thank you for being here and taking part. If you wish to speak now, anybody that wishes to speak on items related to tonight's agenda, please come forward, state your name and who you represent.
Okay. Hi, my name is Becky Knight. Just trying to wait there a little bit. And I kind of wing it here tonight, but disappointed to see only 4 attendees tonight. A 3rd reading should have everyone present. And I understand why people are away. I struggled with trying to reconcile backing an ordinance. I'm talking about the Towers ordinance, by the way, WCF ordinance. Having an ordinance that is flawed, deeply flawed, I believe, or asking that it be sent back to P&Z or wherever for a rewrite. And finally, I settled on asking for a moratorium. So that's where I'm at right now. I think we need time to figure this out and do it the right way from the get-go. And the way the ordinance is right now, it's piecemeal, like when assembly member said, it doesn't flow well. It's not a good ordinance. And then that aside, everything about it seems like it was of, by, and for the tech industry. They've been calling you guys, emailing you guys. We're not privy to it. The public should be privy to those communications, but we're not. And it seems like well, every single version of this has been, it appears to be, the amendments appear to be the result of input at the behest of industry, not of the public. And that's really hard to wrap your head around when people have been at these assembly meetings since October. You know, some packed with people. Right now, everybody's out trying to make a living. I understand that. And it's just kind of blank faces, blank stares, and you just say thank you and move on. Anyway, I think that, your oath of office to represent the people, didn't say anything about industry, needs to be strongly adhered to. And, you know, I've said this before, but there was no hue and cry for all of this big tech infrastructure about a year ago. And now all of a sudden it's this huge race, and I call it manufactured crisis. Everybody was perfectly happy, getting along just fine. And now all of a sudden we have Tidal, GCI, and even AT&T weighing in on this. We're a town of 3,200 people, for crying sake. Anyway, and then on another note, I'm happy to see an upgrade to the conflict of interest amendment. But I think it falls short in a couple of ways. One, I think Sitka does this as well. They read the conflict of interest provision as part of the agenda at the beginning of every agenda. So does anybody have any declarations? I mean, that's putting it in shorthand. But I think that would be a great idea, just to remind people that, you know, the public's watching, and if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. And I think there's more to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else that would like to talk to items related to tonight's agenda?
I'm Micah Klein, and I want to talk about the wireless ordinance. Everybody wants young people to step up and get involved. Our population hasn't grown. People are having less children. I'm a young person. I'm trying to get involved. I'm trying to make an impact. I've been working at this since the fall I've personally worked on this ordinance, and then it's been completely gutted, along with hundreds of people in the community that have supported this work that I've done with others. And it's really, I'm gonna be frank, it's discouraging to see that, you know, I'm a mom of 2 young kids, and here I am spending countless hours to do something for the betterment of my community so that I can keep raising my kids here. I have 2 kids. I'm trying to bring my 3 stepkids, so I'll have 5 kids. And if this ordinance goes in place, there's nothing there to make sure that a tower doesn't go up next to the home that we're planning on building, you know, and totally destroying the aesthetic of the area that we live and going up next to my kids' daycare. So, you know, when you have young people like me, that I'm really busy, I have 2 jobs and 2 kids, and I'm still trying to be part of this public process and help my community and be a positive part of staying ahead of the curve instead of being reactionary, being proactive. And then the ordinance that we all worked on is completely different, and it does really nothing to protect ordinary citizens like me or encourage me to raise my big family here. It's all for AT&T and Tidal and these big companies who are behind the scenes pushing. And so I really hope when you make your decisions, you're thinking about families like mine who we want to grow and we want to stay here, but we need to preserve Petersburg's integrity. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else that would like to talk to items related to tonight's agenda? Please come forward, state your name and who you represent.
I do have someone on Zoom. If, Judy, do you want to go before? Okay, all right. This is Lindsay. I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lindsay.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Assembly, and community members of Petersburg. Thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss GCI's plans to upgrade wireless in your community, as well as the important work that you, the mayor, the Assembly, and the Planning Commission are doing to ensure that Petersburg is able to have meaningful input regarding infrastructure projects in your community. Our goal today is to provide a brief overview of our plans, including some background, what this means for wireless coverage in Petersburg upon completion, and offer you subject matter experts from GCI who may be able to answer some of your questions. We understand that the topic of towers has been really sensitive for Petersburg. We've been a part of many of these meetings, including our own community meetings, which some of you have participated in, and we applaud you for your work in trying to capture the sentiment of your community. As you may know, GCI is Alaska born and raised, and to this day, we are exclusively based in Alaska. Alaska is an especially tough place to deploy our services, in large part due to the beautiful terrain, and Petersburg has definitely been no exception as far as that goes. Recognizing the uniqueness of Alaska, the FCC created a program called the Alaska Plan specifically for Alaska and telecom providers like us. The way it works is carriers, including those of us at GCI, commit to serving a certain number of Alaskans in very highly rural communities with both wireless and internet services in exchange for support. Petersburg has been identified as a community with significant coverage gaps, therefore requiring wireless upgrades to ensure, essential community functions are possible, like emergency calls being reliably completed, commerce like fishing and tourism, Coast Guard operations being optimized, the airport, having more coverage. It's not currently fully covered, and many other critical public safety applications that robust wireless networks do provide. Our participation in the program obligates us to complete these commitments by the end of this year, 2026. So to meet this obligation to the FCC, GCI is planning to replace equipment that was previously located on top of an office building downtown with a tower on a commercially zoned site on Nordic Drive. We've been planning and searching for a site to this end since the spring of 2025 that enables coverage in the specific areas that we're required to expand to, and that complies with, your zoning and permitting. And it has been surprisingly difficult, I think, in some part because, apparently living in a fjord creates some extra engineering challenges. And so the property that we're currently planning to construct, the tower, we actually call it a monopine because it's camouflaged very well to blend into the surrounding areas and trees. It's undergone the vast majority of its permitting and review process, and we expect that process to be concluded in the next few weeks. Tonight, as you consider your wireless infrastructure ordinance, we just want to ensure that all of the questions you may have are answered and request consideration of our proposed amendment, to ensure that you have the right subject matter experts responsive to your questions. I've included my engineering colleagues, Jorge and Hassan, who can discuss various criteria necessary for ensuring that projects get the coverage where they're supposed to get coverage and not where they're not. Including many of the specifics related to Petersburg. I also have my colleague John, who has been engaged in the site selection process since day one, and also Kelly, a GCI attorney who can speak to the ordinance. We thank you again for your time, and we welcome any questions or feedback.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Are there any questions from assembly members? Good. Hearing none, Lindsay, thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to talk to items related to tonight's agenda?
Judy Omer. I'm speaking for myself. Spent the last 2 weeks since the last time we were together, thinking about the letters that were in the correspondence packet last meeting. And it had really surprised me that, from the 3 telecom companies that you heard from, AT&T, Title Network, and GCI, such strong letters and basically threats included. And it made me really wonder about, Title Network has the properties they say they wanted to put the towers they say they're gonna build. GCI said, oh, we're just moving 1 tower from the Wells Fargo building out to right behind Dean Roundtree's house. And AT&T, to my knowledge, hasn't approached Petersburg for property or the idea to put up a tower. And so the question in my mind was, then why all of this opposition and this heavy language and all of that? There was nothing really that we hadn't heard before. Most people quote the FCC 1996 version of that, but they forget the sentences that came before what we can't do. And in that, we just give up basically the sovereignty of our town or the rule of our town. And the telecom companies move in and they do what they please. And that's what I see in this, where one of the speakers before me said, yeah, we've got a real watered down bill at this point, like disjointed one and things. One of the places I saw that was troublesome was the word co-locate, because people tend to think about that. It's somebody puts a tower up and other people can jump on it. And it also means that co-locate is associated with data centers. And so I don't want in this ordinance to be including, authorization for data centers in Petersburg. There's even the term colo, which means that's how they use it in towers and data centers. And so I caution you to be very, very careful with that kind of language. I was told by one member that, well, this is just about towers, the data center will be a different ordinance. But there again, we go splitting everything up. So I just urge caution. The other ordinance that I wanted to speak to a little bit was the one on the sales tax exemption for seniors and the differences in that program that was taken away last election, what's in place now, and a place a lot of people wanted to go to. There were like 340 signatures in about, less than a week's time that said they wanted this on the ballot. So I hope whatever decision is made tonight, whether it I don't know how the process works. If it goes from that's a first reading, it goes to second and third and whatever. But I hope you follow what you have done before with putting things on the ballot. Put them on the ballot even if you disagreed with it, and let the people have a voice in it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to talk to items related to tonight's agenda?
My name is Susan Martinez and I'm speaking for myself. And I was the primary culprit, I guess, for getting the petition for the seniors tax exempt cards. And it was my understanding that had to go to the ballot of the people to decide whether this was going to be a yes or a no vote. I want to make sure, because after reading what you guys wrote in here, I'm not sure if you're planning on changing the verbiage or how people vote, whether they just vote yes or no. I tried to keep it simple, so it's not confusing to people that go out and vote. They're either going to vote yes, they want the seniors to have the exempt, or no, they don't. And I would like to see it presented just as it was written, between the back and forth between the attorney and myself for 5 weeks before I could even get petition pages to go get it signed. And I think remarkably, I got a good voice of the people in this community, because like I said, we got probably between 340 and 350 signatures within probably a 3-week period of time, because that's all the time I had. So I just want to see it presented to the people how it was written and agreed to up front, before I even started getting signatures, not changed and rewritten to be something that it wasn't. So that's all I have to say. And I do want to thank everybody that came forward and signed the petition, and all the input that I got from most of the seniors. I even had younger people sign the petition. And I had very favorable response from the youngest one just got his voter ID card all the way up to somebody that was almost 9 years old. And they were all very positive about wanting this pushed through. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you for your testimony, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the session. Anybody else like to talk about items related to tonight's agenda?
Good evening, my name is David Keating. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I appreciate the irony of this first reading of an ordinance to establish nepotism standards for elected officials, coinciding with the third and final reading of an ordinance to regulate wireless communication facilities. If the purpose is to more clearly encompass what constitutes an assembly member's quote, substantial financial interest beyond a household, why not include an assembly member's place of business and associates? The reason I bring this up is because the generally accepted definition of nepotism is, I quote, the practice among those with power or influence of favoring relatives, friends, or associates, end quote. How and why did associates get excluded from the legal definition of nepotism? Associates, by the way, is defined as, quote, joined or connected with an organization or business, end quote. If the purpose of the ordinance is to establish clear standards regarding the appearance of impropriety in official actions, why risk selectively redefining nepotism to the exclusion of personal associates with financial connections in an organization or business? Additionally, if the purpose of the ordinance is to establish clear standards, why not also define clear standards as to what constitutes the threshold dollar amount? The Wrangell Borough's Code of Ordinance does exactly that quite succinctly, allowing an unadulterated definition of nepotism inclusive of associates. And I read, substantial financial interest means an interest currently held by that person or an immediate family member, including involvement or ownership in a business or property ownership that is a source of income or financial benefit, or professional or private relationship or contract that is a source of income or financial benefit, or an affiliation with an organization which the person holds a position of management or is an official, director, trustee, employee, or the like. A financial interest that would result in a gain or loss exceeding $1,000 in a single transaction or more than $5,000 in the aggregate in 12 consecutive months. Lastly, I return to the irony. The irony of this first reading of after-the-fact lawmaking on nepotism occurring on the same agenda as the last reading of an after-the-fact legalization of siting at least 4 new cell towers. This constitutes the embittering of tax-paying homeowners who never expected their health and wealth so easily sacrificed, and especially sacrificed by our own local government to the bottom lines of multi-billionaire oligarchs and their proxies. The irony that the borough is selectively redefining nepotism while leaving unquantified what constitutes substantial financial interest and ignoring with a shrug what constitutes public health and safety. Public health and safety being, first and foremost, to upholding the social contract. This is not lost on hundreds of borough taxpayers having registered their concerns while witnessing the pointlessness of showing up in the public process. We know these after-the-fact ordinances are functionally useless. We, the damned, know the damage done by making a mockery of the public process in opposition versus a handful of public supporters. Countless hours of research were invested in scores of public testimonies in opposition to the borough's bum's rush to legalize immorality. This has created a stain that won't wash out. History will show this stain on the public process is how the mock got put in our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else would like to talk to items related to tonight's agenda?
Can I speak for my son at this point and then I'll speak for myself?
Yes.
So my son is on Starlink, amazingly, out somewhere in the Gulf of Alaska. And it's working just fine. And now I lost his,
Before you go on, could I get you to state your name for the record?
I'm sorry, Kirsten Dupree.
Thank you.
So he would like to see the 1,500-foot setback, as he has testified to in the past. He said, are there, and there should be shouldn't be worried about federal law right now, that can come later. There are people in here, I'm sure, that have kids and grandkids that go to this daycare that is gonna be so close to the one tower if it goes in. And he couldn't call in, so he just wanted me to say that. So for myself, speaking for myself, Kirsten Dupree. Many years ago, there was a woman, a dear friend of mine, and she was really upset that people on the council were bickering between each other at these meetings and couldn't get anything done because they just couldn't agree on anything. And I said, that means that all of our voices are being heard, every one of them. If they can't agree on something, every voice is being heard. I don't feel that that's what's going on right now, or has been since the very beginning. It's very disappointing to see what has happened with all the work some of these people have done. Not that you guys haven't done work yourself, but for the people that have shown up, that have been here, and you might not see them because you're not on Facebook, although I think there's a Safe Tech, Alaska Safe Tech page that people could be looking at and seeing what people really think. So I think that that's all I have to say is I don't think that it's going well for us because there is no disagreement amongst any of you. It's all for one. So our voices are not being heard.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else who would like to talk to items related to tonight's agenda? Please come forward, state your name and who you represent. Is there anybody else on Zoom?
No, there's no one.
With that, I'm gonna move on to next item, which is person being heard on related to tonight's agenda. Is there anybody who'd like to talk to items unrelated to tonight's agenda? Again, please come forward, state your name and who you represent, and you have 5 minutes. Anybody on Zoom?
No, there's no one.
Okay, thank you. There are no boards, commission, committee reports. There's nothing on the consent agenda tonight, and there's nothing on the report of other officers. The mayor's report is included in the packet. I'm not going to read it tonight, but essentially what it is it describes what all our boards and commissions do. And I think it's a pretty good synopsis of what, if you were to sign up, and I would encourage people to sign up for some of the advisory boards or whatever they would like to do. And that gives pretty well a good synopsis of what each of the boards do and the commissions do. With that, there's no manager to report. And I'm gonna move on then to unfinished business. Unfinished business, ordinance 2026-17. An ordinance authorizing the borough to issue electric utility revenue bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $3,315,000 to finance the Scowl Bay Standby Generation Project, and directing that this matter be submitted to the qualified voters for the consideration at the next regular election to be held on October 6th, 2026. Petersburg Municipal Public and PMPL is requesting approval of ordinance 2026-13, authorizing the issuance of revenue bonds in the amount of $3,315,000 for the construction of the Scow Bay Standby Generator Project. Construction costs increased since the project's initiation caused a dramatic budget shortfall that would be funded through this bond issuance. If approved by the Assembly in this reading, the question of issuing the revenue bond debt will be placed on the October 6, 2026 local ballot for consideration by Petersburg voters. Ordinance 2026-13 was unanimously approved in its first and second readings. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2026-13?
Second.
Moved by member Newman, seconded by member Mucci. Discussion? Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions about the ordinance, and so. On the second paragraph, it talks about the percentages. That's generated via SEPA, it talks about 75%. And will this new standby generator adjust this percentage, or is the standby generator just going to be used occasionally? Or,
Through the mayor, no, it doesn't adjust the percentage our power comes to us.
okay,
It's basically to make sure that in the event of a power outage or our connection to SEPA is cut off, that we have sufficient backup generation to get the power back.
and a couple follow-up questions. So if this does get passed by the voters, then the rate increases that are currently scheduled are planned to cover this, is that correct?
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, the debt services, payments were figured in, the next 5 years rates increases.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if I can add to that, this is needed also because of a 3% increase in power usage each year. Our generating capacity, and I think Stephen can address this better than I can, is not going to be sufficient to meet needs we'll have in the future.
That's correct. So you take our coldest day of the year, this last year, we had a peak of 13.8 megawatts. And our current generation with running everything we have is roughly 13 megawatts. So we would have had to make choices of who doesn't have power for a couple hours as we rolled through. I mean, ideally, we're not gonna run it very often. I highlight that if loads continue during our SEPA shutdowns like they did this year and last year, we probably won't run any generators in town. All the generation we've done is scouted between the existing unit there and this new one. And then blind slew. So downtown will be a lot quieter at night.
Member Mucci?
Yeah, just one final question. It says that we're gonna utilize $3.8 million of this cost out of our reserves. And so what does that leave in our reserve?
Good. Utility director?
Really may have to help me with that, but I think that'll still leave us roughly under the board. We have considerable amount set back just for the Main Street transformer here, which I don't think will be enough under the current plan. That's why this year we did, or just getting ready to launch a design study or feasibility study on different options to replace the one transformer we have here. That's a split voltage, so it takes 2400 or 48 or 4160 and steps it up to 24.9 and all in one unit. And that's a pretty rare unicorn. It could be up to 10 million to 12 million to replace it. So we're looking at splitting that up into two separate generators, which should lower that considerably. I would guess off the top of my head to less than 2. And free up some reserves for some of these other projects we have coming, like another generator, the pin stock replacement for the hydro was a big one. If that answers your question.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Other questions from the assembly members? Okay, would the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 2026-13?
Member Newman,
Yes.
member Martin,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn.
Yes. That passes 4-0. Moving on to second item on unfinished business is ordinance 2026-14B. An ordinance amending Title 19 zoning of the Petersburg Municipal Code to regulate wireless communication facilities and other towers and transmitters. If approved in the 3 readings, this is the 3rd reading. This ordinance would establish zoning and permitting standards for wireless communication facilities and other towers. Requires these facilities to be reviewed as conditional uses, providing public notice and planning commission review and approval, while remaining consistent with the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996 and related regulations. The ordinance created a new chapter of the municipal code governing wireless facilities. It would prioritize co-location, set development standards, and provides a waiver procedure if strict adherence to the development standards would require technically impossible designs, cause structural instability, or result in an inability to close a significant coverage gap or leave a coverage area functionally unable to handle emergency calls. It is intended to balance the community's need for reliable wireless and other communications services with public safety and aesthetic concerns. And a list of it, and I will come back to that, but do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2026-14B? So moved by member Yuki, second by member Newman. On the list in the packet tonight, there are three proposed amendments. These are housekeeping amendments, and I think they're located on page 37 in the packet. Then member would like to make a motion to approve those. I would appreciate it. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to amend ordinance 2026-14B by adopting the 3 amendments on page 37 of the packet.
But the amendments, motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Newman. Is there discussion from assembly members? Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I could read all 3 of these, and I will, but and also maybe we could have staff give us an explanation of what those 3 are first, or I could read them first, or whatever you'd like me to do.
I'm gonna refer that back to Liz to address the 3 amendments and the reason for them, if you will, please.
Sure. Amendment number 1 through the mayor is on page 8. And basically this clarifies that modifications to a legally existing wireless communication facility that meets the definition of an eligible facilities request are exempt from the requirements of this chapter. And that was the original intent of that language. It just clarifies it to make it clear and actually specify that it is exempt. But under federal law, anything that qualifies as an eligible facilities request that a provider requests is basically exempt from regulation and is subject to a building permit, just an administrative approval. Amendment 2, page 8 also clarifies that a modification that qualifies as an eligible facilities request is only required to adhere to the original conditions of approval if the modification exceeds the federal threshold for a substantial change. So that's basically clarifying that if, let's say, we had an existing 100-foot tower and a provider came in and said they were going to co-locate another antenna on that 100-foot tower, and the approval was for a 100-foot tower, they can actually add up to 10% to that tower. And that qualifies under this eligible facilities request. And so they don't have to meet that original approval, condition of approval, because it's within the threshold of an eligible facilities request. I know that's really confusing, but that is the way the federal law reads. And then the last amendment is, eliminates reference to paragraph C, which was deleted as part of the amendments adopted in second reading. So that's just a conforming amendment so that we're not referring back to something that doesn't exist anymore.
Question for the Economic Development Director. Other questions or comments? I didn't.
I'll probably have more questions and comments. If the amendment passes.
With that, then, would the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
That, the amendments passed unanimously. Now I'm back to the main motion, and I believe Member Mucci had some questions.
Yeah, questions, I suppose, and a couple of comments, I'm gonna be voting for this ordinance and the change to the chapter. I understand the members of the community who don't think that we've listened to them and change this ordinance to meet their concerns and some of the things they'd like to see done here, but for me, a moratorium doesn't work. I've watched this legislation and this issue move since before I got on the assembly in August, and when I got back on in October, it's been a topic of conversation weekly, if not several times a week. And I think this is a good step in putting some guidelines and parameters for people who are interested in putting towers on Midcoff Island and by not doing anything, for me, it's not an option. Since we started this process and since this ordinance came forward to us, we've seen another piece of property being bought and a tower will probably go up. They might be ahead of this ordinance. I'm not sure where that process is, but for me, it's a matter of doing something before we have no control, which we barely have now. And I know it doesn't make a lot of people real happy, but I think that this ordinance in the way that it's written will give us a start and a place to move forward to. I know some members of the assembly aren't real happy with it, but I think we've worked out some of the differences, and there might be a time in the future where we have to look at this ordinance again to adjust some of the things that are in there, but as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time, this works for me at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Other assembly members, Member Newman?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, this has been a long road and, a difficult path to navigate this situation forward. I was one of the very first ones to advocate for an ordinance because I viewed it as like a tool in the toolbox. The only way that would allow us to regulate or at least put these towers hopefully in the least detrimental place. But we live in such a small community, there's just not a lot of options. And then when you factor in, people were to sit on this side of this desk, your perspective would change because you realize there's only so many things that you can do and you're constrained by federal law, and we have to comply with that. And if you want to go from, go to Congress and bark up that tree, that's really where the issue is, because we have to, if we were to do a moratorium and to say no to towers, then we'll end up in court, and then we'll be spending a lot of money in court. And I don't think that the general taxpayer wants us to be spending a bunch of money fighting this thing. And I think there's certain people that just won't be happy unless the answer is just no. But we're trying to figure out the best path forward for all of us and within the constraints of federal law. And it's been difficult. There's been a lot of criticism, but I feel like this is a good ordinance, and you know, we can modify it and make changes to it in the future if deemed necessary. And I feel like this is worthwhile.
Thank you. Member Martin, do you have any comments?
Are we still voting on amendments or are we at the main motion here?
Yes, I wanted to know before we voted, do you have any, before I call the vote or call the roll, but do you have any comments to add to? What
Yeah,
you
well,
were-
yeah, thanks. Yeah, I agree with Member Mucci and Member Newman's comments there. And I, you know, to the people who have been against the towers all along, I feel bad I'm not able to represent you better, but I do think there's an element of being down a rabbit hole, and the health effects of towers is just a part of it. And I want to represent you, but I'm just not a believer. You know, there may be some truths to some of it, but federal law has really tied our hands here, and we're just trying to do what we can, get something on the books, so at least there'll be a public process, which wasn't available a year ago. So I'm going to be in favor of it.
Thank you. I agree with the three members here. I spent more time with our attorney on this issue than I have with any other attorney issues this year. I mean, considerable amount of time with attorney, and I know more about it now than I wanted to know. So I'm gonna vote also for it. I know it's not perfect, but it's a starting point. And so with that, with Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I wanted to thank everybody. I know the people that have been against this might not take to heart that I do appreciate listening to them. On every amendment that I've looked at and the conversations I've had with community members, I've tried to use their comments to make this a better document. Sometimes I've been more successful than others. But I think borough staff has done a good job of putting together a wireless ordinance that I can live with. I mean, the first three provisions under the start of this chapter is to promote health and safety and the general welfare of the public and the borough, to preserve the authority of the borough, to regulate the location of wireless communication facilities, and to protect residential neighborhoods and the borough's aesthetic characters from the adverse impacts to towers. And for me, that's what I'm trying to do with this. We've heard from members of the public to think that we're trying to split this issue between data centers and cell towers, and nothing could be further from the truth. It has nothing to do with it. Cell towers is a separate issue. I know the electrical department is working on large electrical user ordinance to protect us from somebody coming in and putting some type of industry here that would suck a lot of electrical from us. And I think the borough is working on addressing some of the concerns that we've heard about data centers. And this ordinance is just to get us down the road in cell towers. So I know a lot of people won't be happy with it, but I'm willing to see how it goes. Thank you.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Member Mucci.
Yes.
The ordinance 2026-14 will be passed with unanimously with 4 members present, 4 members voting for it. Going to move on to new business then. Under new business, we have ordinance 2026-15. An ordinance of the Assembly of Petersburg Borough, Alaska, amending Title III of the Petersburg Borough Code to establish nepotism standards for elected officials. This is the first reading. If approved in 3 readings, this ordinance will amend Title III of the Petersburg Borough Code to establish nepotism standards for elected officials as required by the charter. The ordinance creates disclosure and recusal requirements when an elected official's family member has a substantial financial interest in a matter before the borough and prohibits participation in certain employment-related decisions involving family members. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2026-15? Second. Been moved by Member Newman, seconded by Member Mucci. Discussion from assembly members. Where were you, Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just maybe for the folks at home, maybe how we got to this.
Yeah, I can address that because it is required by the charter. We have not done that and we went back, the clerk and I went back and looked at this earlier this year to see whether or not we had something that was up to date and something that did. And with that, we both agreed it wasn't, and we looked at three or four different other ordinances that other boroughs here in Alaska had. And we turned it over after some thought to our attorney. And essentially, this is our attorney's take and what she proposes that be in place in our borough.
Great, thank you very much.
Other questions from some of the members?
This is essentially housekeeping on the borough charter.
It is, and trying to define specifically, what constitutes, a conflict. It gets closer, but it's not perfect, I agree. And we have two more readings, if we can make, any member can make other additions or changes as we go along here.
Great, thank you.
Okay? Would the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 2026-15?
Member Michi,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Member Newman.
Yes.
And that ordinance 2026-15 passes unanimously with the four members present voting for. I'm gonna move on to, next item is ordinance 2026-16. An ordinance amending the Petersburg Municipal Code to provide senior sales tax exemption to qualified residents of the borough 70 years of age or older, and this is the first reading. The borough has received and certified an initial petition proposing the senior sales tax exemption for qualified borough residents 70 years of age and older pursuant to PMC 2.44.080. This ordinance is being presented to the Assembly for its consideration. If the Assembly adopts a substantially similar measure, the initiative petition is void and the initiated matter is not put on the ballot. However, because this ordinance would create a sales tax exemption, it would still require voter ratification under Borough Charter Section 12.02B. If this ordinance is not adopted, the initial matter will be submitted to the voters. With that, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2026-16?
So. Second.
Moved by member Meacham, seconded by member Newman. And with that, I'm going to ask the manager for clarification on that second paragraph, if you could, please. Or.
Yeah, I can go and speak to that, Mayor
Yes,
Lynn.
please.
So this is an interesting process. So an initiative petition is brought forward by the citizens. And for some initiative petitions, the Assembly could adopt it and put it into effect immediately. But because this is an exemption, it would create a sales tax exemption. It requires voter ratification. So no matter what the Assembly does during these three readings, this will be on the ballot. The Assembly could make small changes if they wanted to change the application date or perhaps the fee, but it will be on the ballot.
Thank you. One discussion that the clerk and I've had with our attorney was what constitutes a minor change and what constitutes a major change. And our clerk's on vacation, or our attorney's on vacation, and I can't answer some of the questions I have. And the question also was the voters last year passed an initiative, or not an initiative, but an issue that the Assembly put on the ballot, doing away with senior citizens and moving to the state system. And there's this conflict with that and with the initiative, because our charter also has a provision in there that says that no changes can be made within 2 years of that. And again, I can't answer your questions because we don't have we don't have an attorney in this. So I would propose, unless there's some of the members would like to make some motion, I would propose we pass this on the first reading and see and ask for clarification, to the second reading. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree. I have a few questions for the finance department and for the borough manager, that I'd like to get some answers to before I move forward with this. I'm willing to move it forward in its first and second reading, but, I guess the question I have right now for what is in here, is this actual wording of this ordinance, is this mirror what the petition was?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Not totally.
Well, I would hope that if there are some suggested changes for this ordinance, that they be brought to the borough staff or one of us on the assembly to make them mirror what the petition said, but the second reading, it will be the public testimony, and if people are concerned about it, they can bring some of their concerns up. But yeah, that was a question I heard tonight, and I'm willing to move it forward in its first and second reading, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Member Newman?
Yeah, I would like to applaud you for spearheading this and taking it forward. And this is a part of the public process. And I think that's a very important ability of the public to do this, ability to take an issue to the assembly. And I also agree with Assembly Member Mucci's comments that if it's not being accurately portrayed in what's written here, then you need to, let us know so that it gets exactly what is in the petition. And then we can move forward with the process. And then after the readings, and if there's other changes that people propose, then I think this is something I can get behind.
Thank you. Any other comments from assembly members? Would the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 22/16?
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Mucci.
Yes.
That ordinance 2026/16 passes unanimously on the first reading. And what I'm hearing, there is a lot of questions that to be answered on that one, which I think we can do between now and the second reading. I'm going to move on then to ordinance 2026/17, an ordinance of the Assembly of the Petersburg Borough, Alaska, establishing the Thomas Bay service area of the borough, providing for the governance and financing, and authorizing use of local improvement districts within the service area. This is the first reading. If approved in three readings, ordinance 2026/17 establishes the Thomas Bay service area within the Petersburg Borough and creates a new chapter in the Borough Code defining its boundaries, services, and financing. The service area would include all properties within ASLS 81-235, excluding the federally owned parcel, and would authorize the provision of services such as fire and EMS, police, road construction, and maintenance in parks and recreation. The ordinance does not mandate a specific level of service. The level and form of services, if any, will be determined subsequently by the Assembly through the annual budgeting process. Because no voters reside within the proposed service area, its creation is based on the consent of the borough and the state of Alaska as the sole property owners within the area. Memo from Director Cabrera, a letter of consent from DNR, and the map of the area are attached to this agenda item. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2026/17?
I make the motion to approve ordinance 2026/17 as presented.
Second that.
Moved by Member Newman, second by Member Mucci. A little background on this. If I could get Director Cabrera to explain why what we're trying to do, and why now, why not later? And then a little bit about how we determine what the services and what would be provided. I know I read a little bit about that, but that's also decided at a later date. But if you would, please.
Sure, through the mayor. Well, the intent is to establish a service area in a subdivision where there currently isn't anyone residing, and the borough or the state owns all of the property. So by establishing a service area first, we already have established what services will be provided, what services wouldn't be initially provided, and a mechanism for anybody who resides there in the future to be able to avail themselves of those services. So that avoids the issue of people asking for services and no service area in place to provide it, and the borough administration having to figure out, do we provide it? Do we not provide it? You know, are we setting a precedent by providing it? How do we recoup costs for providing it? I think setting up the service area in advance alleviates us from having to make those decisions and provides a path forward for future development in that area. The services that are being proposed are fire, EMS, police, road construction, road repair and maintenance, and parks and recreation. This ordinance basically just authorizes the provision of those services, but it makes no statement as to what level, when those services would be provided, what level those services would be provided. That is all subject to appropriations and future action by the assembly. So if there's any other questions, I can try and answer those.
Thank you. Any questions from the assembly member? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. This is pretty interesting. So will we be seeing like budget? Not amendments, but budget process next year, there will be stuff for the Thomas Bay area? You know, to deliver those services, or are we still in the process of sorting it all out?
I'm gonna direct part of that question to our finance director, Bart, here. How we will determine when and what to charge. I put her on the spot. I can see that right now.
Well, I guess it depends on whether someone comes forward to the assembly and, well, the one wants to buy the property or lease the property and what services provided, and they, then the borough assembly would decide whether they want to offer those services or not, and then at what cost.
Yeah, well, I guess just, wait, I had something there, sorry.
I'm next.
Go ahead.
Member Newman, go for it.
Okay, so just for clarification, this does not include any of the lands or private property at Point Agassiz. This is specifically for the lands that were conveyed to the borough through the borough formation process by the state of West. Yes.
And Director Cabrera has a thought here. Go ahead.
You're correct, except that it also includes state-owned parcels. So it's borough property that was conveyed through the land selection process, as well as 3 or 4 state-owned parcels that are within that subdivision. And it does not include anything at Point Agassiz.
So is there any ideas for including Point Agassiz properties in this in the future or no?
In order to include properties where people are residing, that would require a vote of those residents, is my understanding. So
this is part of our process. I'm thinking to figure out what we're gonna do with the property. So we're establishing a service area so that establishes an order of what we're gonna, the next step is what we're gonna do with them. Am I correct?
that's basically the idea. I mean, it's a lot simpler to establish this
Beforehand.
And then if people want to take advantage of it and use it, fabulous. If not, it's there and it doesn't do anything unless people actually want services.
I look at it as a forward looking. as you're talking about, then we can decide at that, since once we establish, then we can decide if somebody wants to lease property, they know what the rules are, and what's been established. They also, if they want to sell property, but it establishes the priority, establishes the process. And that's, we've not done before, this is a new, essentially a new concept.
So within this framework, is there like, gonna be zoning or, and like CCRs attached to these properties?
Through the mayor, no CCRs, that's usually, handled, through a homeowners association or something like that, and not through, the zoning. Currently, there's no zoning outside of Service Area 1, so there's no zoning right there. Of course, you have tasked me with expanding zoning outside of Service Area 1 in a limited capacity, and so when that takes effect, outside of Service Area 1, it would take effect here as well.
So what we're closing out there, but it take effect over there.
Other questions from assembly members? Yes, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Martin.
Yes.
That ordinance 2026-17 passes unanimously. Moving on, ordinance 2026-18, ordinance amending chapters 4.13, 4.16, 4.20, 4.27, and 14.18 of the former city of Petersburg Code to account for borough formations, and this is the first reading. If approved in 3 readings, this ordinance will adopt the Petersburg Municipal Code by removing outdated provisions, consolidating utility extension requirements into a single chapter, and updating Cabin Creek Road user fees. The changes are intended to modernize code language, clarify utility extension procedures, and better reflect current borough operations and costs. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2026-18? So
Second.
moved by member Mucci, second by member Newman. And with that, I'm going to ask our utility director to give kind of a brief explanation of what is intended.
So primarily it's, again, housekeeping with, it's also capturing some of our procedures and policies now with the line extensions. Such as, the 3 big ones are outside of the Service Area 1, for example, we put a line extension in on a private road, and the road isn't maintained. It puts the onus on private owners to plow it if something happens, so that we can fix it, or if the private road washes out, we can't safely get utility equipment there. We gotta make it safe and disconnect until they can make it the road serviceable enough for our $400,000 truck to go through and people to be safe. That's one big provision. The other is the adoption of the sewer, how that is done, whether the borough takes it over or not. On brand new subdivision, the borough would assume ownership of the sewer system after Director Rural and all the rules have been met, and it goes through the final platting on existing. The same provisions with making sure it's up to standards, and then the assembly vote on that, if it wasn't part of the whole planning. Those are the major changes. Say the rest is just changing the language.
Yes, I have 2 questions for you. There's also, essentially, we haven't changed anything that's there. In other words, it's grandfathered in place, what we have. In other words, we're not changing anything in this ordinance, it's already in place.
No.
Okay, and the second part of that question is, one of the items we talked about was situation where where there's a road, let's say 3/4 of a mile long. Somebody somewhere halfway down or somewhere along that road wants utility services. Nobody else there's nobody either on the road or nobody has it. And I read this, but did we haven't addressed that issue in here?
So we have, did have a provision, thanks for reminding me, that would protect that one person. However, the lawyer and our charter is not happy with that provision. Our charter doesn't really make any provisions to honor that, because we have to appropriate funds in a budget to pay people back. It makes us a banker where we have to hold money for 5 years. So if you paid me $100,000 to put a line to your property, we'd have to hold that $100,000 either for a year or 5 years. And then pay it out to you through an ordinance. The other way to do that is just set up a trust, which is basically, or not, that's more like the trust. The other way would be we collect the money from the one person and give it to the other. And I'll have to get back with exactly what the lawyer's problem with that one is. And then the third is saying, you have to pay you before we'll hook up power. So it's very, very messy and not set up to be done with how the charter currently is. But I can get you a better answer on that after Sarah gets back from Scotland.
Thank you. Other questions from assembly members? Would the clerk please call the roll? We're in ordinance 2026-18.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Martin.
Yes.
Ordinance 2026-18 passes unanimously on its first, I think it's first reading, yes. Moving on, resolution 2026-19. Resolution of the Petersburg Borough Assembly approving the sale of a borough-owned parcel to Robert Funk. If approved, resolution 2026-19 would authorize the sale of a borough-owned parcel at 503 Lumber Street to Robert Funk under the negotiated contract of sale. Planning Commission recommended approval after a public hearing, and the Assembly later authorized direct negotiations. Parcels are not needed for municipal use, and PMC 16.12.160C requires Assembly approval by resolution for their disposal. The contract of sale is attached to this agenda item. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2026-19?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2026-19 as presented.
I'll second.
Moved by member Newman, seconded by member Mucci. Discussion from assembly members or questions? Okay, seeing none, now would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Resolution 2026-19 passes 4-0. You're gonna pass unanimously with all 4 members voting for. I'm going to move on then to resolution 2026-20. Resolution authorizing the application for an execution of the state revolving fund loan for a wastewater disinfection study. If approved, this resolution will authorize the borough manager to apply for and execute a state revolving fund loan of up to $150,000 through the Alaska Clean Water Fund to complete a wastewater disinfection study. The study will evaluate wastewater disinfection alternatives, develop preliminary engineering recommendations, and identify improvements needed to meet current and future regulatory requirements. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2026-20?
So. Second.
Okay, moved by member Mucci, seconded by member Newman. Discussion on first, I think I'm gonna go back to our public works director. Aaron, would you like to give a little bit of a synopsis of what is intended and where do we need to go?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item F and item G are both related to the wastewater discharge permit that was issued by the EPA in November of last year. Two conditions of that permit are conducting both a disinfection study and an industrial pretreatment study. Studies need to be completed by November of this year. What we're asking for is permission to reach out to the state revolving fund for money to pay for these studies. Both of them have been added to the project priority list with the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. This particular disinfection study has 100% loan forgiveness, $150,000. The industrial pretreatment, again, we've asked for $150,000 for that study, to which we would be receiving $75,000 of loan forgiveness.
Question from assembly members? Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Member Mucci,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Member Newman.
Yeah.
And that passes also unanimously with 4 members present voting for. I'm going to move on to resolution 2026-21, resolution authorizing the application for and execution of the state revolving fund loan for an industrial pre-treatment program. And this is also part of the previous item 2. If approved, this resolution will authorize the borough manager to apply for and execute a state revolving fund loan, again, of up to $150,000 through the Alaska Clean Water Fund to develop and implement an industrial pre-treatment program for the borough's wastewater treatment system. The program will help the borough meet state and federal wastewater pre-treatment requirements by evaluating industrial discharge. And program will help the borough meet state and federal wastewater pre-treatment requirements by developing local limits and establishing monitoring and enforcement procedures. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2026-21?
Second.
Moved by member Newman, seconded by member Mucci. And again, I'm going to ask our public works director to put just a little more detail on why we're doing it at this point in time.
Again, the requirements of our discharge permit are that we have this study completed by November 1st of this year. Right now, we have one industrial user that's discharging into the wastewater stream, and that is the Baylor facility. With the Scow Bay Boatyard being built, that will be a second contributor, but there's already a industrial pretreatment system worked into the plans for that.
Thank you. Questions from assembly members? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these two resolutions are just two of the steps that need to happen before we can begin in the project.
I'll jump in through the mayor. So we have a lot of steps in this project. The EPA for our permit is pretty expensive, and these are two of the studies that are necessary. The next big piece after this will likely be actually the engineering plans for implementing all of this. And for that, we have some money coming from Senator Murkowski's office. And we're hoping to get more if the costs come in as high as we unfortunately think they might be.
Thank you.
Any questions for assembly members? Would the clerk please call the roll on resolution 2026-21?
Member Newman,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn,
Yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Member Mucci.
Yes.
Resolution 2026-21 passes unanimously with 4 members present voting for. We're going to move on to item land purchase application. The borough has received an application from Brian Newman to purchase borough-owned property at 1205 Lake Street The planning commission held a public hearing on June 9, 2026. As required by PMC 16.12.480 and recommends approval of the sale of the property to the applicant. The assessed value of the property is $15,000. The planning commission report is attached to this item. During this meeting, the assembly shall determine whether the application shall move forward in the application process or be denied. If the application is to move forward, the assembly shall schedule public sale or exempt the application and disposal from public sale. The public sale, the assembly shall determine if the sale shall be outcry auction or sealed bid and shall choose a date, time for the sale. If exempted from public sale, the assembly shall establish the alternative method, terms, and conditions of the disposal. Do I have a motion to approve the sale of the property at 1205 Lake Street to Brian Newman? Member Mucci?
Would you like it in the form of a motion?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move that Brian Newman's land application is appropriate for disposal by direct sale. And I authorize the borough manager to proceed with direct sale process in accordance with the borough code. And preparation of the necessary documents for future assembly consideration.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Then, this motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Newman. Member Martin, member Newman had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, I would like to recuse myself from this land purchase application. Even though I do not have a financial interest in this application. Brian Newman is my nephew and a close family member. And so to avoid any claims of nepotism, I'm going to recuse myself. Thank you.
With that, I've got to go back with the clerk here. In this case, we only have 3 members present, with member Newman recusing himself. We have to have 4 votes, so this would have to move then to the next meeting.
That is correct. You could postpone this agenda item and the next agenda item to the August 5th meeting, August 3rd. I'd have to check the calendar.
So moved.
So
Did you, I mean,
August 3rd would be the next
3rd meeting.
meeting. Yes.
so, yes, I would like then, if we could, a motion to move it to the August 3rd movie, please.
So
Second.
All those in favor? I'm just gonna call motion, just.
Point of order. Just a point of
Since
order.
you're. Hold on this, I'm gonna move it forward. First, am I okay with this?
Yes.
Assemblymember Newman can vote on the issue to move it to a different meeting. Can't vote on the subsection.
Right. So would the clerk please call the roll on moving this action item to the next meeting?
Member Martin,
Yes.
member Newman,
Yeah.
member Mucci,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn.
Yes. So we're gonna move this land purchase application to Brian Newman for the property at 1205 Lake Street to the next meeting. Moving on to special use permit, Lake Street right away. If approved, this special use permit will allow Brian Newman to use a portion of the undeveloped Lake Street right away for access to the 1205 Lake Street. The planning commission recommended approval contingent upon conveyance of this property to the applicant. If someone other than Mr. Newman has purchased the property, the new owner will need to submit an application for a special use permit to access the lot. And since we moved the previous land purchase item, I would entertain a motion to move this also to the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by member Mucci, second by member Martin. All those in favor of moving to the next, I'm gonna ask, I guess, let me back up. I'm gonna ask the clerk to call roll on moving this to the next meeting.
Member Mucci,
Yes?
member Martin,
Yes.
member Newman,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn.
Yes. And so the special use permit of Lake Street driveway is moved to our August meeting. Moving on, there's a letter in the packet to support for the PIA Transit Vehicle Replacement Grant. Petersburg Indian Association is seeking a federal transit administration funding through the fiscal year 2026 Tribal Transit Competitive Program for replacement of a transit vehicle. The attached letter provides the Borough Assembly's endorsement of the application and support for the continued transit services in Petersburg. Do I have a motion to approve the letter supporting PIA's transit vehicle replacement request?
So
Right.
Moved by member Bucci, seconded by member Newman. Any discussion from assembly members? I think it's an excellent letter, and I think that in this case, the PIA does an excellent job of transiting folks around town. It's a well-needed, well-used, well-needed program. So I'm supporting with the program, and with that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Mucci,
yes.
Member Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Lynn.
Yes. And the letter of support to the PIA transit vehicle replacement grant passes 4-0. Moving on, communications since July 2nd, 2026 are in the packet. I'll not go over the assembly member discussion items. Assembly member comments? Member Mucci?
It's, it's not really a comment, it's just a question. During the recent planning and zoning meeting, there was no recommendation to move forward with the subdivision next to the fire hall that Title Network had asked for. Can somebody explain to me what the next process is in that process?
I'll refer that back to Director Cabrera.
Sure, the lack of a second led to the motion failing. And so Tile Network has, just like any other applicant, has an opportunity to appeal that decision. They have to file an appeal within 10 days, and that appeal would presumably come before the assembly acting as Board of Appeals. So I don't have any other information beyond that.
Thank you.
Other comments from assembly members? The one thing I'd like to do is recognize our state representative, Rebecca Himshoot, is in the audience tonight, and I should have noticed that up front. I didn't do that. I apologize. I'm going to move on. Any assembly members have recognitions? Hearing none. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned.